real estate agent, no matter what the market does, there's always enough business for you. It's just a matter of, getting the right leads, offering the right, having the right conversations with buyers and sellers, making sure your expenses make sense for your revenue. It's like, if you do all those kind of like basic things, I think it just almost doesn't matter what the market does, right? If you're an order taker, if you're low sales skills, then your business is going to be a lot more market driven than driven by you.
So the question is this: how do most agents find the secrets to succeed in today's competitive real estate market, especially when the top agents are keeping those secrets to themselves? That's the question, and this podcast will give you the answer. Hi, I'm Aaron Amuchastegui, and welcome to Real Estate Rockstars.
Real Estate Rockstars, this is Aaron Amuchastegui. Hey, today I get to interview Dan Lesniak with the Carrie Scholl team. Dan has been on the show a couple times over the past, 5-6 years. I think he was on once with Pat. I've interviewed him once on here, but it's been a while. It's been a couple of years, I think, since the last time we had a conversation. Him and I keep up with each other a lot online, on social media, what we're doing. We've done some Ironman races together and some other things. I think that was the first time we met. It was a half Ironman for St. George, and before Go Bunnings, before anything else. How's it going out there?
Good. I'm thrilled to be back on. I think the last time I was on, I was in this room, in this studio, but it was maybe the first half of COVID, kind of that time frame, 2020-ish or so. So it's been a good 3 years.
Yeah, I think it probably was. I think it was mid 2020, and the fear of COVID in real estate had changed to the crazy market, and how do we make this crazy market happen? Or maybe it was right at that ship. You're in the Washington D.C. area, right? Yeah, DC.
And so we covered DC, close in Maryland, Northern Virginia, all of those areas.
So I wanted to jump right in. I know we're going to get into stats thing, but I want to jump right into the DC market. And here's why. In times past, when I've talked to you, we talked about back in 08, 09, 2010, housing markets crashing everywhere, but didn't really crash in DC. And then when COVID first started and stuff was slowing down, or 2018, 2019, Washington, D.C. seems to have a different level of demand than the rest of the country because it's growing consistently, right? The government's getting bigger. A lot of government-based stuff is out there. There's demand that keeps that area flourishing. And I'm curious now if that's still holding true, because some markets, people are telling me, hey, there's buyers are coming back. Other places, people are telling me our market hasn't slowed down that much. Most people I'm talking to, though, the market has dramatically slowed down since March or April last year. What are you seeing out there?
We definitely had a big slowdown in number of units last year. So second half of the year in particular, Q3 and Q4. Then in January, when the rates kind of went from the 7s to the low 6s, we started getting crowded open houses, multiple offers, bidding wars, not on all listings and properties, but on a lot of them. So it's been a busy 6 weeks. I don't know if the, small drop in interest rates was just enough to get those people that kind of stalled out in Q3 and Q4 from making a purchase. Was that just a month-long blip of activity, or signs that we're going to have a big spring? I don't know. But I've also been hearing similar stories from agents in, many other markets in the country, definitely Florida, Southern Virginia. I've kind of heard the same thing. So
yeah.
We saw definitely slow, the second half of last year, but so far this year, it looks different.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are telling me that at the beginning of the year. And I think it's a really good question to brainstorm over so rates and affordability matters. 100%. matters. It's impacting, you think of first-time home buyers. First-time home buyers will buy the biggest house they possibly can. They'll buy the biggest house they get approved for. They're willing to pay as much of their paycheck as the lender will let them, right? No matter what, but they're going to cap out. And I got a pre-qual on a house this week, and it was for $245,000 purchase, and it was at 7.375 is their interest rate. And I was thinking that buyer a year ago could have bought a house for $550,000. Essentially same payment.
Yeah.
They could have bought one for $550. Now they can only afford $250. So they came to market. They're making that offer, but affordability does matter. Now, then he got that 7.25 after rates kind of blipped back down. So maybe he was, in a worse scenario before that. But we've seen a lot of buyers coming back, and we also saw a lot of people that were sellers take their home completely off the market. Just said, "Hey, we're not going to see it." I've seen my feeling of what the market's like right now is what it was like. So in California in 2010, we had let's say 6,000 houses on the market, but 4,500 of them, 5,000 of them were bank owned or short sales, which really meant they were never going to sell. They were listed at 500,000, but the market was now at 300,000. And we had lots of buyers that were willing to pay, or essentially we had a lot of buyers that were able to buy in that neighborhood for between 300 and 350, but the sellers couldn't sell them for that because they were upside down or REOs, or they believed that the market was going to change. So it was kind of this stalled out market. And I kind of feel like we're at that right now. I think the pricing, the lists that come on the market where people can afford them, matters. I think that blip in interest rates helped. We will see if it also changed the mentality from people to go okay, I guess if rates are never going to be 3% again, it's time to start buying. I think it's going to be really tough in the higher price point houses to see people trade out though anymore. When I think of the house that I'm in, right, I'm in a crazy jumbo loan that I bought the day that Texas got shut down from COVID. I refinanced it in January last year at 3%. And if I was going to move into a house that's in the same, if I was just going to move to another house in the neighborhood for the same price, my payment goes up $15,000 a month or something. And you just go okay, I guess I'm not going to sell this thing. I know eventually people get worn out from that, but I think all those things are going to be impacting. It'll be interesting to see what happens on the top end of the market. But you're in all price points though? Yeah.
We're in all price points, I think, and we do some business in Florida as well. I agree with you. I think so. There's people that the move up buyer, I think is the toughest one right now. But when you look at what that does to the market, that takes a buyer and a seller out of the market. So it's almost, from a pricing standpoint, I think it kind of doesn't have an effect. From a velocity and turnover and what we do in real estate, as agents, it's not good, right? We'd probably rather have prices come down and see more deals, but so the move up buyer phenomena is interesting, right? Because you're essentially losing a buyer, losing a seller, but now all these people that bought 3% interest rates, they might not be in their forever home, but they might be in the home that they're gonna stay in it for a little bit longer now, or until the second kid comes and forces them out, right? Or some, they'll still move for life events, but it's definitely going to cause a decrease in volume, I think.
Yeah. I think everybody in real estate can agree on that right now, whether it's whether we're going to have a pricing correction or whether we're going to have a pricing crash, or whether we kind of already did. And in Austin, for example, Central Texas, I think we've already had our adjustment. We've already had our big crash, but just not everybody's willing to sell for what the buyers are willing to pay for. Right. And we don't have this crazy foreclosure volume, but it's houses that were worth 500 are only trading for 325 now. That's it. That's there's plenty that are listed at 500, but they're not selling. They're not closing.
Right.
But what we can all agree, but then there's people that are saying no. So there's disagreement on price and what's going on, but nobody is disagreeing on volume. That no matter what, the amount of closings happening is going way down. The biggest pivot of every,
at least this year.
Yeah. You're right. Things happen and things change. Like, who would have guessed that COVID would have all of a sudden put people on a buying spree? Right. Demand just went up so much higher. Like, everyone just wanted to move. And that was a very unique thing to have that put pressure on. So something else will put pressure on people wanting to move again, but the volume goes down. So a big challenge right now for most people is how do you handle less volume in your market? So, like, what are you doing right now? What are you telling you? You have so many agents on your teams. You've got people that you coach and lead. So if somebody right now is coming to you and saying, like, hey, I was 3% of my local market, whatever. I did this much of my market last year and this was my volume, but now the volume's been down so much. Like, what should I expect to do this year? What can I do? Do I just take it easy and be grateful for anything I get? Like, what strategies are you talking to people about right now?
Yeah, definitely knowing your numbers, knowing where your leads are coming from, how much you're spending on it, knowing your ROI. Some of the lead sources we had many years of success with, the ROI went down, so we shifted, right? We shifted away from certain ones and into others. So, like, track your expenses, track the ROI on your leads, cut the ones that aren't working, reallocate into ones that are working. Get back to some of the free leads, right? Like, pick up the phone and make phone calls. Expired and withdrawns all of a sudden have been a good area to hunt in compared to the number that there were, in the last couple of years. So, getting a really good hold of your database. So, events, communications to them, text, phone, email. One of the things we did last year, we shifted some of our client events and actually ended up doing smaller ones that cost way less, but gave us the ability to do more overall. So, that was a way to get in front of more clients at a lower cost. So we're watching our expenses a lot more than we ever have. And then we're also trying to add agents and because if you're running a team and, it really doesn't cost you much to add agents. So if you already have the infrastructure to support the leads, get more agents in there. And there's more agents right now, we've noticed in the last couple of months, that want to be on a team, because some of the agents that, were good on their own when easy leads were coming in, they need more leads and support and training right now.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, when times get tough, like, going together is easier. Partnering with somebody is easier. Whether it's people joining a team, or it's people reaching out, whether it's growing your own team and splitting stuff up, even when it comes to like lead costs and things like that. Because when you're tracking your ROI for a lead, one of I think the biggest challenges right now is that a buyer's lead a year ago was more than likely going to turn into a paid lead in the next 90 days. Like, if you were out there showing them houses in the next 90 days, you were going to get a commission. You were going to have an ROI come back on that.
Yep.
Or listing. You get a listing, your ROI is there. Now, what I'm hearing from a lot of people is you can get this lead, but it may take 2 years for this lead to become an ROI paid thing now, because they're interested. You're showing them some houses, they're seeing it, and they're like, I can't afford what I was hoping. I can't, they find like these really specific things, like, all right, if I can get a house in that neighborhood, I will. But other than that, because of affordability, because of payments. And so people are, the buyers have the benefit now of, you're not always against multiple offers, but the downside is that buying power has made a big impact. So they're like going, hey, someday, Dan, I'm going to buy a house with you. But how do you keep them on the hook over the next year or two inside that, to know, like, when they're ready, you want them to come to you, but these leads are now a lot longer, like everything. And so it's, when you're judging your ROI, that's tough. But if you start to team up with people, if you do it in a partnership, then maybe somebody else can deal with the colder leads or something. Or
so we have a system on our team. We have, database, and we use Follow Up Boss, but we've got a team of inside sales agents that will stay on top of them. So I think you have to automate if you can, if you're not operating on a team, like automate your follow-up and your stay in touch plan. I think you should be emailing your entire database at least weekly. I know a lot of people say monthly, but I think weekly is better. And then whatever time frame they give you, we always cut it in half. So if they tell us like they're looking to buy in a year, we don't wait till a year. We start reaching out like in month 5. So I always cut their timeline in half. Especially, we notice in the last 60 days, our team's been booking a lot of appointments with people that we were working with in Q2 and in Q3, right? A year ago or half a year ago. And now those people are coming out of the woodwork, right? Like maybe it was lower interest rates. Maybe they've got big rent increases coming. Like, who knows? But so reach back out to have a plan of how you're going to reach back out to leads that you were talking to 6 months ago, 8 months ago, a year ago that haven't bought yet.
Yeah. You talked about doing smaller events, like smaller team events to get in front of people. What are some of those events that you did? What are some of those like ideas that people could go try to do? Like there's a lot of people out there that have never done their first event, right?
Yeah.
And now they're trying to figure out how do we stay in touch? What are some of those ideas?
We used to do this big fall festival at this like beer garden place, and it probably cost tens of thousands of dollars for either us or our sponsors to put on. So we replaced that with a series of, I think we called it Screen on the Green. So we bought like an inflatable movie screen and, got a permit from the city and, did 3 different movies. So it was like one every month for the fall. And then we told local food trucks we were doing it. And, they came and were just there providing people the opportunity to buy their own food. But then, I think we gave out kids crafts and like popcorn. So like our cost was, I think all in buying the equipment, it was like $1,000 to put on 3 of them. And, people in the neighborhood would see it. It was just more visibility than doing one thing that cost like $20,000. So.
Dude, that's pretty brilliant too, because that's just like a fun Friday, Saturday night. Like when we go on vacation, like we went to Rosemary Beach and that was like one of the things. Like on Thursday night, there's like a screen on the grass and they're watching like a Disney movie from 5 years ago. Yeah. And everybody was there. Everybody's like, yeah, we got nothing to do. It's a Thursday night. Like, let's go out there, and everybody grabs a blanket and they sit on the grass. So like what a fun, simple thing that people are like, especially in the neighborhood or nearby, they're like, why wouldn't we go do this? It's like a fun memory with our kids, right? Go out on the grass and go watch something. I really like the idea too of just telling food trucks like, hey, we're going to be here. So they'll go out there. So people have these it makes the event bigger. But yet such a low cost. I think a lot of people could try something like that in their market pretty quickly, pretty easily, pretty low budget. I mean, I've been talking to people lately about like renting out full movie theaters and stuff like that, or renting out like little base, like doing these different events. But I think that the people are down for the events like that. I think that's a great idea. What a cool
minor league baseball games are really good too, because those are in a lot of different towns and they don't cost, like we used to do the Nationals one, then that changed after COVID, but
that's what I've heard. I've heard the minor league baseball. It's a fun event. A lot of people sign up for it, but
because I have some agents in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and they do the AAA Nats game with their clients every year, and I know the cost is like a fraction of what you pay to go to the major leagues, and I think it's like just as much fun, if not more fun. So yeah, people get to have the experience when you can provide a company event that also just creates these fun, happy memories for people to do with their family. Like what a cool way to say like, hey, here's a gift that we're giving to you guys that doesn't have to come off as salesy, but ends up being salesy, and they remember you're a real estate agent, right? That's the biggest key, I think, with so much of the follow up is them remembering you're an agent, you helped them before. What you don't want to have happen is in 6 months when they tell you they're going to buy a house in a year, 6 months from now, they start thinking about it because the rates get a little drop and they're like, okay, now we're ready. And they forget that you're an agent. Right. That happens. Like people forget. It's ridiculous. But when did you get your license? When did you first get licensed? 2011.
So 2011, that was an interesting time because prices were kind of in a lot of markets were. I know you were in Washington D.C. at that time.
Yeah.
So I guess you tell me, what was the market like back then, and any comparison to how it is now?
It was fewer transactions, low inventory. I mean, now that I'm saying it out loud, like a lot of the same effects. Like there were problem with move up buyers back then is like they didn't have a place to buy, right? So there's just less deals in the market. So my first year I had to really go out and get good at finding off market homes. Like, I would meet with a buyer, get their criteria. Like, okay, bad news, there's nothing on the market. Good news, there's only 50 of them in Arlington, so I'm just going to go knock on those 50 doors, and and I'd find them a seller.
Yeah,
that was kind of how I started in the environment. So some similarities in that there's like low inventory, and people didn't know like what was going on. I think the peak to trough in most places in DC was like 10 to 15%. So, most people were not upside down. There were some people that maybe bought in like pre-construction condos at the height of the market that took like a 10% hit, but that's not too bad, right?
It's funny, right? It's exactly like right now. Like 2010, 2011 feels so much like right now. What I like about what you just said, one of the things I've been trying to tell people, so in like 2010, the beginning of the year, my wife's not an agent, right? She gets her broker's license beginning of 2010. I start buying foreclosures, fixing them, and having her sell them. And the first year, she's like the third biggest person in Northern California for volume. Next year, she's like at the top, and she's hitting like this champions thing. And they're going, you weren't even an agent 2 years ago. How are you getting such a big chunk of the market today? But the whole key was we made that market with off-market buyers. Now, at that time, it was buying foreclosures and fixing them and selling them. Right. You're talking about doing something similar where it was like, where since you had to find the market. Like people want to buy for a certain price. It's really hard to find people that want to sell for that price. So then you were becoming that middleman. Talk about that process for a little bit and see if maybe there might be something in there that somebody today could apply in their local market. Like kind of just unwrap that process. So somebody finds a buyer, the buyer says, hey, I want to do this, but I can only pay this much for it. But we can't find a seller that's willing to take that for it.
Yeah, it usually would mean you have to find a seller that has a life event that's compelling them to move. So as I'm thinking about a lot of my off-market deals, I know like, one of them got job transferred to the other coast. Another one was in a condo and had a baby, had to go, move to a single family. Another one, I know there was a divorce. So I think a lot of the ones I found, life events were dictating that they sell, and people didn't really know what the price was. They knew what the last one traded for, but the last one might have traded 4 or 5 months ago. So there was this lag, and you didn't know, like, you knew you'd get more than that, but you didn't know how much because there just wasn't a lot of volume. But when there's demand for it and not a lot of inventory, you're going to have some floor on pricing. So I think like people that are looking at April, May, maybe June 22 pricing, if they had to sell now, they might be disappointed. But if you're outside of that peak, you're probably okay. It's just most of the sellers I found then were they had life events that were compelling them to move, which that might be what we're in now, right? With 3% interest rates, like you're probably not going to sell unless you have to, unless a life event is compelling you to move and you need the equity out of that house.
Hey, real estate rock stars. This is Aaron Buchastegi, and I'm interrupting myself to bring you this commercial break from one of our sponsors. There's somebody I've been looking at for a long time, and when they reached out to me, I said, yes, we have to be able to do this deal. So that sponsor is Follow Up Boss. there's a lot of superstars out there that use Follow Up Boss. What's your favorite CRM?
We're using Follow Up Boss.
We use Follow Up Boss.
So we use Follow Up Boss.
I love Follow Up Boss. I love it. We have action plans now for bringing on new agents. We have action plans for our recruiting.
We call them action plans in Follow Up Boss, which will trigger tasks for the agents to do as far as calling. Follow Up Boss I like more for the integrations with everything, MailChimp, Call Action, all those different products.
I will say we used Sync and we switched from Sync to Follow Up Boss.
Honestly, the greatest CRM I've ever used. I've used Brivity, Sync. I've looked at Boomtown, like Real Geeks, just a bunch of different ones. But me personally, I fell in love with Fub about like 7 months ago when I first started using it.
I've used Boomtown. I've used Line Desk. I've used Conversion. And I think Follow Up Boss gives you the most integrations that are simple, and it gives you the best ability to go and integrate large things into one single solitary platform, yet at the same time it's still affordable.
I do like Follow Up Boss better just because you can text from the app and things like that. It's just a little more convenient for me.
It tracks everything that I need. I can customize it if I want. If I want to go smart list based, that's fine. If I want to go task based, it's fine.
I think it's one of the best systems, and it's very user friendly.
It just really helps me never drop a ball because it's so user friendly.
I don't have a one horse in the race with Follow Up Boss. Purely objective, Follow Up Boss has been the best one that we've found.
Now, I've used Follow Up Boss. We've actually used it in our non-real estate businesses as well because it's so good at being able to set timers, set automatic texting and emailing. So here's what we got. For Real Estate Rockstars listeners, you get a 30-day free trial. That's normally 14 days. So in order to get this, you go followupboss.com, just like it sounds, /rockstars. Go there, get your 30-day free trial and check it out. Especially if you aren't using any systems or any CRMs yet, this will be a great one for you to start with. Thanks again. Now back to our show.
And when you would do that, first you would essentially find a buyer client, and that buyer client would say, I want to own a house in this neighborhood. Yep. And you're like, there's no houses for sale in that neighborhood, but now there's only 50 that meet your spec. So I'll go door knock. And because the reality is like most of them would say, no. And then somebody says, well, like, yeah, we think that we're going to have to do that pretty soon, but we've heard it's not a very good time to sell right now. Like, so the concerns that have kept them from going all the way, and you're catching them at that moment.
I would leave this little note behind because most people didn't answer. So if they didn't, I would leave them a note, and it basically said like, hey, I've got a client looking for a home like yours. Due to the lack of inventory, you might be surprised by what your home could sell for. That was it.
Yeah. Dude, listeners, that's a perfect strategy for right now. Because I think so many sellers right now are like, man, we're saying about properties, man, we should have sold these in January. Man, now we're stuck. And I think the idea of being able to just very slowly go, you might be surprised, due to the lack of inventory, you might be surprised at what prices have done. I know there's been a lot of talk about, price going down. You might be surprised. That at least gets the call, gets the foot in the door. I love that first strategy for people out there right now, because I think so many of you agents listening, you have to go create your market.
Yep.
And you have to go create your volume, because it's not just going to come back the way that it was, for all the reasons we talked about, for the stuff but it's low inventory, but low transactions. And there's a big gap between what sellers want, what buyers can pay in a lot of markets. And we'll see, where that pushes. And so what's something like when you think back to, so you've been an agent now for 12 years and you got to see, you came in at a difficult time. You were an agent during some pretty boom times, like 2012 to 2015 was pretty big. And then we had this normal kind of market until about 2020. And then in 2020, the market just went bananas. But looking back, what's one or two things that you wish you would have known when you first got licensed? Something you've learned?
I never really paid a whole heck of a lot of attention to the market itself. I don't look back and think, 2012 to 2015 was a boom, and then 15 to 19 was normal. Just hearing you say that, I'm kind of like, oh, was it? I almost didn't know. So I think as a real estate agent, no matter what the market does, there's always enough business for you. It's just a matter of, getting the right getting the right leads, offering the right, having the right conversations with buyers and sellers, making sure your expenses make sense for your revenue. It's like, if you do all those kind of like basic things, I think it just almost doesn't matter what the market does, right? If you're an order taker, if you're low sales skills, then your business is going to be a lot more market driven than driven by you.
I mean, there's a strategy in that, right? There's really a strategy in that of your idea of, you said, I don't really pay attention to what's going on in the market. And I can see some people going like, well, hey, but you're supposed to know. But no, the reality is you're not going to take the news out there in the market telling you, hey, this is going on. You're not going to let that impact your drive. Like, you're going to see what's happening in your world and then pivot in order to get the deals that you want or the ways that you have to get them. I like what you talked about early on too, about switching, looking at the leads, trying to determine what our ROI is, and then going, okay, these ones aren't having the ROI that they used to have, and switching, but also going back to those free leads. Like, as long as you're doing the follow-up, splitting up a certain amount of time from like incoming paid to these free leads, because the other unique thing about this time is people get unhappy with their agents. They don't really blame the market, right? They blame the agents, which isn't right, but it's just the reality. So you give somebody a chance to go like, oh, well, if my agent would have done more open houses, my property would have sold, right? And when you're calling those people, if you can, in my mind, I'm thinking, as long as you can figure out why and you can ask them, hey, why didn't your house sell?
Yeah.
And if they tell you that it will, and if there's a concern that they tell you that you can solve, that's like the easiest next part of the thing. Well, hey, would you want to give us another chance if we don't have that be the problem anymore? Because even if you believe it, like if they say like, hey, my agent didn't do flyers and open houses and door knock the neighborhood, and you're like, okay, I don't think that sold it. But if you're like, hey, I think that I could get them to get reasonable with this, and this, like, or fine, I'll do open houses and that. Like, even if you don't believe, like, I think there's just a way to ask them, like, why didn't it sell? And then being able to say, like, will you give me a chance if I can do that? What scripts are you doing or telling your team to do on some of those?
Yeah, so on expired and withdrawn sellers, we've had a fair amount of success with those lately. And, we always ask them, like, if we're able to get you an offer from a qualified buyer at market price, are you still interested in selling, right? We always want to establish the timing and motivation. So what's making you want to sell this house? It's such a nice house, right? When would you like to sell it? Okay. And then we will ask that question that you said, like, well, why do you think it didn't sell? What went wrong? And then we're going to try and tie everything back to the timing and motivation, right? So it'd be like, well, I understand you think, it didn't sell because, the open houses weren't good. If I could show you a plan that would give you effective open houses plus these other three things that I'm going to do, like stack on it, right? Would that be something you'd be interested in exploring so that we can get your home sold in the next 60 days so that you can move to Texas, right? Or whatever their motivation was. Yeah. So, it's basically finding out that timing and motivation, what went wrong, and then tying how we'll solve it all for them.
Yeah. I like that. I like that as some scripts. So let's switch gears a little bit right now. So one of the big ways you and I get to keep up is through social media. I've seen you your social media has been growing quite a bit. I think what are some strategies that our listeners can do out there for, to do that? Like, so many people know, like, I need to make consistent posts. Yep. They have a tough time, sticking with it. They have a tough time coming up with content. I remember there was like a series of videos you did, like one a day, that was like showing, like, I think it was like a state of the country. I don't remember what the ranking
we did like
was.
We ranked all the states by which ones to invest in.
Yeah, there was like states to invest in, and then one day you would do like number 10 is this. It was like a 15-second video, and then that was it.
Yeah.
And the next day would be like number 9 is this. What are some different ideas and things like that people could apply, or what are you seeing work really well as you're trying to grow your social media reach?
Well, definitely consistency and getting, and you have to get good at video, especially vertical video. So the TikToks, Reels, YouTube Shorts. And then I think building the muscle of just at least making one a day, right? One video a day. If you can post one reel a day, like you'll figure it out eventually. And then 2, most agents should not do what I do. I make content that is more geared towards real estate agents, right? I think most real estate agents, you should be making content that is going to portray you as a local expert, right? Mm-hmm. A local expert that's also a human, so humanize it, right? So, don't make the whole page about you doing triathlons, but if you do triathlons, like bring that in every now and then, right? Like so make yourself a local human expert with your content and post more of it. Most people just don't post enough.
Yeah, posting the consistency, kind of come up with one of those ideas that you could do that does get you.
You could rank like the top 10 restaurants in your city, or even like rank neighborhoods in a certain region. Like there's all sorts of ways that you could kind of play off that state idea that we did.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the way that for people out there too, the concept that I was talking about that Dan did, he could have made one video that said, here's the top 10 states to invest in, and just said, Texas, Oklahoma, Arizona, whatever they were. Right. And it could be a 30-second to 1 minute reel. And that's what we're seeing a lot of. You see a lot of that. And you go, great, that was a good idea. That only bought me a day. Right. And one of the concepts they were doing, they were taking this essentially the same concept and just releasing one a day. Like, hey, top 10 restaurants in my area. That's a great thing for an agent to establish themselves, for content, for locals to come back and look at you on YouTube, things like that. People are going to search best restaurants in Raleigh, and if they go to your YouTube page where you're ranking the best restaurants in Raleigh, that's going to work. But also splitting it into multiple. Where on one day he's like, this is number 10. Come back tomorrow, and I'll tell you the restaurant that got number 9 on our survey.
Yeah, and you film it all. You film it all in like something like that. You could film it all in 30 minutes. Like we did this. I did the state one in like an hour and a half, and it was like a month of content. So
yeah. Yeah. So like batching it out that way. So every time you guys come up with a good idea for social, maybe ask yourselves, is this something that we can split up over a few days or a week or a few weeks or even a month? Like Daniel did. How many people are on your team now, or like in your office? So it's your wife, Carrie Scholl team. You guys have essentially a bunch of agents. How many do you guys have right now?
We've got about 40 agents that are on the Carrie Scholl team.
I love seeing the videos where you're interviewing. It's like you're chasing one of the team members around, like at the coffee pot, and you're like, "Hey, where did you go to school? Yeah. What did you do? How much money did you make last year?" Right, and it's really getting to highlight these people that are. It's really highlighting the beauty of real estate too, where it's like, hey, like you're making a lot of money, and you didn't have to go to college, or you're doing it's just like these fun things to highlight. Yeah,
the first couple times we did that version with Elisa, we were getting 5-6 million views on TikTok, and we don't get quite as many now when because we do different versions of that one still. But yeah, people love that one. Loved her.
People love it. It's crazy. Like my brother just took his whole team to Cabo, right? For like, hey, you guys hit a certain number of sales. Hey, we're going to go to Cabo. And I'm telling them, like, God, you got to have ways to take that content and turn it into something where other agents in town are going to be like, wait, what? Everybody on your team, you took to Cabo? Like I've never been to Cabo, and my broker never brought me on a trip because other people in my office did good. Right. Like, so figuring out it, but yeah, that's a good video that makes sense that why it grows so much. You're like, hey, this girl's making a lot of money. She's great. You get a lot of views, and people reach out and you go, I want to make a lot of money like her. Or so you recently switched brokerages. I remember you'd done a video that was like, what people do when the athlete video, I think it was at the end of the year where athletes were picking like what colleges they're going to go to or what team they're going to go play for, where they're sitting there at the desk and they have all the hats in front of them and they take it on, and you threw on your EXP hat. And for the longest time were you with KW?
We were independent the last 8 years. prior to that, we were at KW, and I started my career at Century 21. Carrie started at Remax. So we were on our own, keeping 100% of everything for 8 years.
Cool. So you did it a bunch of different ways. And what made you decide that you wanted to kind of go like re-affiliated after being on your own for 8 years? Like, why did you decide it was a good time to change your whole setup?
Well, we tried to expand into Florida, the team, during COVID, and it was hard. Like, I had to go get licensed as a broker, set up new shops. Then we're like, well, do we need to go brick and mortar? And so we kind of beat our heads against the wall for a while, for about a year, with that. Like, how do we expand beyond the DC area, right? And I realized, like, if we're going to go into multiple states, it's just going to be never ending, licensing, hiring brokers, and this, that, and the other. And I don't want to be a broker in like multiple states. So there was that element. TikTok played a role in it, right? I was getting a lot of people from TikTok and Instagram in 2021, like, asking to be on our team. And I'm like, okay, great. Where do you live? Austin. I'm like, okay, do you want to move to DC? And a couple people did. A couple people moved to go join our team. But I realized, there's some amount of real estate agents out there that like what we're doing, want to be a part of it. And the EXP model gave us the best way to expand outside of our local market. We can go into any state, 50 states, 24 countries, and people join EXP. They name me or Carrie as their sponsor. We give them our coaching programs, right? We give them all of our coaching programs as a benefit for being at EXP with us. They get, I don't have to set up a new company for them if they're in a new state. They just join EXP in that state. They get a low cap. It's only $16,000 for a solo agent. And then, we get the benefit of revenue share, which is like real money. And it took me seeing someone who was, operating at one of the higher levels with regards to revenue share at EXP to like really get it and see what was possible. And I was like, wow, those are some big numbers, and I can focus on the things that I like doing, which is, marketing, recruiting, and training. So it just fit everything we wanted to do with regards to expansion. And I think there's a massive opportunity there for us.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense because there's so many pros and cons to being affiliated or not, right? There's lots of them, and I think a lot of people make that transition to go from, because sometimes agents just want to be team leads, and that's great. And sometimes team leads want to be brokers. I remember that was the route that we did out in California. We wanted to be an independent brokerage. So we started Capri Property Real Estate. We owned the company. We owned all of we owned it, right? So every agent was just a part of our system. We could make our systems. And I think in California and Oregon, it's really, really common. And people will talk about, well, there isn't really an advantage to join a KW or an EXP or something like that. But it makes a lot of sense too, that whole idea of expansion, because it does when we were in Northern California and we had our brokerage office, and everywhere we went in California, that was going to suffice. And it was a really big market, right? From the top of California to the bottom, there was a lot of cities that got combined in that market without having to do any sort of extra stuff. But when you start to cross state lines, that makes sense to me then, of why you were like, okay, we're ready. Rather than go do what we did here and rebuild it, let's just, is there a way that we can do it a little easier? Or I'll get a lot of people listen to my podcasts that'll say, hey, Aaron, we want to join your team. We want to join your office. How do we do that? Or they say, who should I go with? I'm a new agent. Who should I go with? Where should I go? And I don't have any sort of, I don't have any affiliate deal. I just get to, I figure out people that are listeners, or sometimes you guys will see me put it on my Instagram, like, hey, who's over in this area? And if it's somebody that I've been chatting with, I'll try to do some introductions that way. So, well, I'm happy for you guys that you've made that you decide to, to jump and continue to expand. And it says a lot too about being able to learn. We don't have to be set in ways forever, like as part of pivots and things like that. Like, yeah, you've done a whole bunch of different ways and who knows what it'll be like later, but it's okay to go like, all right, I did this business plan for a while and now I'm going to make a change. On one of my businesses, I do major layoffs and major like switches on one of my revenue streams. And that was a bummer. So there's times you go like, no, it's like sometimes you got to stop doing it one way to pivot and see what's working another. Yeah, I think my last question will just be like predictions, or where do you think the market's going over the next year, or what is the most important thing you're going to be working on over the next year?
I think we're going to see the same amount of transactions we did in like Q3, Q4. So probably like slightly less than we saw in 22. So I think it's going to be low transaction. I don't think huge price drops are coming. I do kind of think interest rates are going to, just when you look at the mortgage bankers forecast, and I think that they're going to settle out in the 5s probably. We'll see. So I think this is going to be a market for agents that really focus on their sales and marketing skills and learning how to have the right conversations. So my focus is really on recruiting agents to the team and in the DC area, and recruiting agents to join us at EXP. I think we're in 14 or 15 states now, our group. We're adding 20, 25 agents a month. So hopefully that pace will get even bigger as the group grows. So that's, I'm really focused on just finding agents in any market that want to, come on board with us and get our coaching, get our mentoring, get our training, and really be partners.
Yeah. Yeah. I think your prediction, I think rates are going to, when they settle, it'll be like 5.5%. It's going to be like as good as it gets. That's going to be the new it. And so once that kind of locks in and everybody, eventually markets balance out and time changes. But I think that's where it'll balance out as it does that. Dan, if people want to come reach out to you, they want to learn more about whatever you're doing, they want to learn more about EXP, they want to get some strategies on what else they can do when they're door knocking on those scripts, what's the best way they can find you?
Yeah, you can check out our podcast, Hyperfast Agent. You can find me on Instagram or TikTok, or you can text me. My cell phone is 703-638-4393, and that's not like an auto responder. That's my cell phone. So it's 703-638-4393.
Awesome. Dan, the fun catching up. We got to catch up for like 10 minutes before we hit that recorder on. Not sure where we'll bump into each other next, but I'm sure it'll be somewhere soon. Congrats on having such a good year and a good outlook on the year, and I can't wait to have you on again.
All right. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Real Estate Rockstars. Thanks for listening.
All right, Real Estate Rockstars, this is Aaron Muchastegui jumping in again to thank you for listening to the show. Hopefully you guys loved listening to that one. And I want to make sure that you know about all of the extra resources that we have. And also, we need your help. They say podcasts are free. You get to listen to podcasts for free. But what is the cost of that podcast? I would say if I could beg you to pay anything for that podcast, I would say the cost of the podcast is going and giving a review. So whether you download it on Google or Apple or YouTube or anywhere else, please go give us a review. Say what you liked, what you didn't like. It helps us get better guests. The more reviews, the higher we get in the rankings. Right now, we are the biggest podcast out there for real estate agents, and we want to keep that spot because we know there's lots of podcasts out there. So go give us a review. Also, be sure to go to hybendigital.com. If you liked any of the resources that those real estate agents talked about, we've got a huge video vault of those resources for free. Every penny that comes on the podcast that we interview, they give us something that helps them get their deals or helps them work with their clients. And we put that in the toolbox in our vault for you. So go to hybendigital.com and you can get it. If you're looking for real estate education, go to rebusuniversity.com. We have all sorts of courses in there to help agents succeed in real estate, how to get the listing, how to negotiate deals, how to become an investor, all sorts of different stuff, rebusuniversity.com. And if you want to chat with me, go find me on Instagram. And if you come find me on Instagram, you can send me messages. Tell me what you want to hear. Tell me what you liked, what you didn't like. We try to put a bunch of content out there too. You can find me in 2 different places. It's at rerockstars.com for our Real Estate Rockstars page, or at aaronmuchastegui.com for my personal Instagram page, where I can chat with you about all sorts of different things. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again soon.